Flogcast may occasionally contain explicit content that makes it not safe for work or for minors. It also doesn't provide an excuse to use the same words on Bay 13. Normal big footy rules still apply.
So this is the Flogcast for round 19 of the 2013 season. Fyfie joined by Dan.
I'm a cop, you idiot! You didn't think it's John Temple.
The Cat Wrangler.
You beauty!
And joining us again after a great win to the Bulldogs, Gogriff.
Hey Fyfie, how you going?
Where do we start?
Oh, no other place than Essendon. Is it tonight that Luke Darcy's interviewing the weapon?
Nah, it got postponed to Wednesday, and...
Tonight's the night that Harrow interviews my weapon.
Well, that's if the Essendon supporters don't kill her first.
They've been terrible. It's all over the place. It's on every board. You just can't get away from it. I'm usually just focused on North, but this week even I've been jumping in.
When they attack Caro, of course you would.
Yeah, kind of a crossover there. I get to say, hey Jacko, Caro just revealed what's going on at Essendon. What do you think about her now?
Essendon Hawthorn.
I've got to apologise. The win wasn't big enough, mate. Should have beaten them by 100 points, so sorry to everyone.
You smashed Essendon so hard, you upset David Evans to the point of resignation.
I think we also managed to prove that Essendon are a team of plotters without their drugs. They'd be nowhere. When they can't bully a team, they're shot.
Is there any chance of Heppel winning a contested possession in his career?
Not likely.
Just hanging out the back all night.
I don't know about Essendon. Everyone's talking off-field, but on-field they're doing well, but they're not getting over the top sides. They're sort of being washed away easily, and everyone's saying, oh, it's a race in three, Hawthorn, Geelong, Sydney for the flag. So, yeah, I'm not sure if they're as good as they're making out with their home and away performances when it comes to the crunch.
Flat track bullies, guys. Comer and Melksham, they're legends in their own lunchboxes. They make Mitch Robinson look tough.
I expected more from that game on Friday night. I think Hawthorn got him a little too easily.
I had to laugh when Rioli looked like he was injured, though. The change in Bruce's voice, it was like that of a concerned parent whose kid's just fallen off the monkey bars or something. It was also interesting that because of the absence of Watson, that Stanton was captain and that Essendon have gone from a captain who was booed by opposition fans to a captain who's booed by their own.
Gee, that's ironic.
I guess the good news was that Turdy had a bit of a cry afterwards.
Yeah, he sucked up a bit, didn't he? A reporter should have just handed over a box of tissues or something as they were asking him questions.
Seriously, I don't reckon anyone should be fooled by his crying to believe that he cares at all.
Oh no, he cares, just only about Jim Hurd.
It came across to me as if it was carefully staged managed, right down to the after-game tweets by the players and, oh, well, let's take the moral high ground now that Evans has retired because he's sick. And it's like, who did it to him? Players.
Do you think they put eye drops in his eyes or something before the press conference?
I don't know, but I had to vomit in my mouth during the presser because, when Essendon began playing the sympathy card, it really made me puke.
Yeah, I don't know about eye drops. It would have involved a needle somewhere, wouldn't it?
This is the one thing I find disgraceful about this whole saga, and it just emphasises Hurd's selfishness. How does Hurd keep his spot, but Evans has to go when, Hurd and a few other people decided not to let it get to Evans' desk in the first place?
I personally think it doesn't matter if you knew or not. If you're in charge of a business, you're responsible.
But they've gone from having a president who will, from all accounts, will get rid of Hurd and everyone else responsible to spare the players and to make sure the sanctions aren't too crippling by cooperating. Now they're bringing in an idiot who's going to, back Hurd all the way, liar that he is, and probably leave him absolutely fucked and drag this on for ages.
It's great. I've got to admit, it just gets better.
Just try to imagine a Titanic in black and red.
This is the thing. What do Essendon think's going to happen if they sue and they're dead guilty? Dimitri is vindictive. They can look forward to 8 interstate trips for the next decade if they take the AFL to court.
See you later, Anzac Day game.
Honestly, Essendon, they're a very arrogant club. They believe they're hype. They've been getting away with it for so long that I think they just believe that they shit gold bricks. And it's like, how dare the AFL question them? How dare you? And Hurd is the golden child, It's like, how dare you question us? We're Essendon.
And you know where this arrogance all tracks back to? Kevin Sheedy.
Sheedy.
Yeah, it's all about image these days, isn't it? I mean, you think of what the AFL did with Melbourne and the tanking thing. It's just a nice $500,000 fine, and then 6 months later, oh, you need a payout to Mark Neal. Here you go.
There's no way the AFL can go half-assed like they did with Melbourne.
Yeah, this isn't the same thing.
Yeah, it's not going to be up to the AFL. The anti-doping guys are going to be into this.
The AFL get them on the governance as well, because the way this has gone, this is the worst PR disaster in the history of the AFL. Tanking's not even on the same planet.
They are in serious strife. I personally think that they have always known how much strife they were in, but Evans is working closely with the AFL, and they're like, we've got to keep the players playing for points due to the integrity of the competition. We can't have them just walking around finishing bottom and not putting up a real fight every week. So you play to the very last round, and at the end of it all, you can strip it all away and then punish you retroactively and say, yeah, season gone, come back next year, and that's the plan. And I think Evans was in on that, but now Hurdy's ego's gotten in the way, and it's like, no, I want to play final because I won't be here next year. So now I want to play finals now.
He doesn't want to go down with the ship. He'd rather fuck the club than go out with any shred of dignity that he had left.
A few things have happened in the last week, I think, that have changed things around, where that agreement that was supposed to have been put together with the AFL and Asada and Essendon has sort of been leaked, and now there's a bit of infighting, I think, whereas before it was all sort of a bit of solidarity.
Well,
he's realised that he's the fall guy. That's what's happened. So he's leaked that, and then he's leaked also that Essendon were tipped off by Demetriou.
I'm honestly not sure they were, to the extent that he's implying. It sounds as though Hurd's just slinging mud at anyone, hoping it sticks, trying to bring down someone with him or muddy the waters by just making everyone look as dirty as him.
He is tipping them off by ringing them and initiating a conversation. And plus, the AFL have admitted and come out and publicly stated that Essendon queried peptides with them, and they were warned by the AFL not to take them, okay?
Yeah.
So they knew Essendon were up to their necks in it. They knew. So if Andrew Demetriou wasn't aware of that level of a problem at one of the clubs he's in charge of as the head of the AFL, then he's incompetent and should stand down. Either that or he tipped him off and the ACCC need to investigate him. It's one or the other. But either way, Andrew Demetriou needs to stand down.
Yeah, and even Asada are being criticised by WADA with all this whole false assurance of AOD not being banned. I think it's very likely that WADA will appeal a punishment that Asada hands down if they don't think it's harsh enough. So, although let's just deal with this in-house, and nicely is falling apart at the seams.
I got to disagree about the Vlad thing, because there is a lot of shit that wouldn't make his desk if they asked about peptides, because Dank's done it all outside the law. That's why Dank won't testify, because he knows he's obtained it from fucking China, and that if he does that, the Crime Commission are going to charge him. So that's why he hasn't said anything, because he knows he's in trouble if he admits it. Like, we expect a lot, but there's only so much Demetriou can do. Sometimes he's to blame, like he went soft on Melbourne and a few other things, but sometimes you just get unlucky.
Sorry, that's just not competent. You're in charge of a business this size, and one of them is querying about them using a banned substance. If that doesn't make it to your desk at some point, then you're just not running your business right.
But he told them no. What more is he supposed to know? Heard asked about peptides and then went ahead and did them anyway. That's different. He's told them no.
I'm honestly not sure what else he's supposed to do.
Vlad's saying he'll sue about this. Well, if he doesn't sue, is that an admission that he hasn't been necessarily above board himself?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I think that Andrew Demetriou needs to stand down. That's how serious this is. He's not handled this at all correctly.
Disagree.
We got to wait for the Robson interview. Hopefully that might shed some more light onto what was happening at Essendon with Hurd and the supplements program.
Bloody Luke Darcy. The only way you could do it worse is put fucking Brian Taylor in him. Oh, wow, wee weapon. You made them all the big boys.
Yeah, it's obviously been a condition of getting him on. Not much of a hard hitter. He'll ask the questions, but I don't think he'll be real tough on the follow-up.
Does anyone know how much he's getting to do the interview?
No idea.
30 pieces of silver.
There's been a lot of hysteria around Hurd, even to the extent that he's possibly had his PR person posting on Big Footy defending him for the last couple of weeks, which was hilariously outed last week.
Yeah, I think he got well and truly found out there.
What was the poster's name? Was it Dudley?
No, Dudley caught him. It was Hawker83. Very good investigative journalism. Caro would be proud of that.
Yeah, that was almost like Hamish McLaughlin, the way that he sort of got to the bottom of that one.
How did they work out that it was an Essendon person? They didn't wipe their big crocodile tears away with their hanky, did they?
He put a fair bit of work in to figure it out. Went through all this posting history, found all these posts were about Essendon, and all these posts were positive and defending them. They even found Ian Hankey's Twitter and just compared some of the language on there.
Not just that, they all, by a day or a couple of hours, predated all of Hurd's statements. Like, they were always right ahead of the official statement being released.
Surely
right.
not a coincidence.
Yeah, his information was too good.
Yeah, he kept it all to himself and then laid it out in one big page, and yeah, it was just amazing to read.
And look, Dudley would have to be worried because our flog of the week goes by the name of Fisher Danson. He will get his cousin or his relative onto Hawker, get his personal details and post them all online because apparently he can do that.
What is it with the Essendon posters lately? I mean, we were getting legally threatened by Strategy last week, and now we're getting bloody threatened by the anti-terror squad from Fyfie.
He's out to get burnt chook with his anti-terror squad.
As this investigation is drawing to a close, the hysteria is just getting out of hand with some Essendon posters, I think.
The walls are closing in and they're not sure what to do.
Yep.
I actually feel sorry for the Essendon fans because, like the players, I think they've been told a big load of tripe by the club to keep them coming to the games so they can keep making money. I know it's a bit of a tin hat theory, but I honestly believe that.
But in that sense, they're still choosing to believe that.
Yeah, at some point you got to say, I'm not swallowing it anymore, not drinking the Kool-Aid.
But yeah, like, it's just this cult of James Hird. They really should be discerning enough not to believe it in the first place, but clearly they will believe anything he tells them. What would it take for these people and the players to turn on Hird? Which brings us to our top 5 this week. Top 5 reasons that the players would stop #standing by Hird. Number 5.
The players are actually banned for taking drugs.
Number 4.
The players started growing a third testicle.
Number 3.
They lost all 3 of those testicles.
Number 2. All the players' wives give birth to babies that look like Bomber Thompson instead of the players themselves. Number 1.
For the players, end up looking like Nicky Dalton with his pants pulled down. Bit of shrinkage.
Next game, Griffey's Bulldogs getting up over the West Coast Eagles.
Yeah, we had a win. We're obviously not throwing the second half of this season away like we did last season, so I think, yeah, we're slightly on the improve the last couple of weeks against Hawthorn and Essendon and got over the line against West Coast. They haven't had a great season based on expectations, but they are a big scalp. So, yeah, we'll move up a bit in the draft order, or move down in the draft order, however which way you want to look at it, but it's good to see some improvement. We're still only 5 wins for the year. It hasn't been a good season by any stretch.
The year looked like being a lot worse than this in about round 6 or 7, though.
There's been a lot of change in the game style as well. They've stopped being ball chasers, I suppose, having all these players around the ball handballing half a metre to each other. Now they're sort of spreading out a bit better, being a bit smarter with their disposal, looking for the short option and kicking to advantage. So, yeah, there's improvement, which is always pleasing to see.
Would there be any chance of them looking at Boyd? It would cost a bit, but what would you consider worth it?
Yeah, I don't know if we would. GWS probably want a ruckman, Minson and pick whatever, 4 or 5 for pick 1. GWS would probably take, but I don't know if we would want to do that. Minson obviously has been a bit of a punching bag for everyone over the last few years, but he's really become elite with his tap work. So I don't think we would be willing to make that kind of trade. I think we'll definitely look at something though. I mean, they'll talk about Gumbleton and Cramery. Who knows if they'll get banned for drug taking and not be an option, but I think we'll look for something. It may not be Boyd, but we'll definitely be on the market.
The Eagles have only ever finished in the top 8 or the bottom 4.
Up until 2 years ago, that only means they never finished 9th to 12th on the ladder.
There was definitely talk about them being the ones to kill the priority pick, where they just had one down season, got the priority pick, and then shot back up the next year.
Yeah, it was 2010 they finished bottom.
After that's when they brought in the criteria to say to get the priority pick, you've got to have been down for a while. You can't just have one bad year. It's a lot more sophisticated than just, the Bryce Gibbs Cup of Carlton versus Melbourne a few years ago and that sort of thing.
From memory, that was the Cruiser Cup, but yeah, discretionary's good.
Yeah, I definitely like that change.
Brisbane getting done by Port. Port held on strongly. Brisbane were coming, but apparently Brisbane got done by the umpires. That's the general sentiment. Our friend Paddlepop had a bit of a sulk. He's not here to...
Yeah, where is Paddlepop?
I don't think Roy Lyon liked his thread praising the Paddlepop jumper, so he threw him in his dungeon.
Yeah, I don't know if Port are all that. They're just sort of doing enough at the moment. I think Brisbane away isn't really that much of a victory by 9 points.
Well, they should have won by a lot more. I mean, they kicked 9-17.
I don't think Port will get past the first week of the finals if they do make the 8.
Regardless of that, it's still a good effort on their part because they've come a long way in 1 year.
There was an interesting comment by Rockcliffe saying after the game that maybe they needed to do a bit more diving and a bit more play acting. Bit of a backhander to Port there, that they're a bit of a diving club. Go down easy, I think.
Well, they do have Montrese there.
Yeah, I learned all about that watching West Coast against the Bulldogs. They love it, and the umpires still fall for it.
Whack, whack, whack. Whack, whack, whack.
They don't dive though, they duck. They put their heads down.
Yeah, they do. Like there's all the talk about whether it's umpires or the rules committee with this sort of stuff. I think that's 100% umpires. The rule is if you duck, then it's not a free. I think bending at the knees and deliberately bringing the contact upon yourself has got to classify as ducking.
But that's the thing, ducking's a rule, but all of a sudden the AFL muddied the waters on that rule by basically saying protect the head at all costs. So the umpires just go ahead and pay. When they put the head down, I got to be honest, I used to umpire, and people ducking their heads was a pet hate of mine. It used to drive me nuts.
So what would you do, Fyfie? Would you pay a free kick or just...
The call was you ducked, and there would be times where a player would put their head down and pick the ball up, and they'd still be bent over, and they'd have a glance up, and they'd lower their head back again and keep going. Like, they wouldn't actually lift their head back up after picking it up, but they'd just have a glance to see if there was anyone coming, and they'd just run on hoping to get a free kick, and I'd tell them you ducked, and that stopped it pretty quick.
The reasons for a lot of rule changes over the last 10 or 20 years has been because clubs have gotten so smart that they take advantage of everything. Everyone just gets taught how to put their head into the contest to get the free or drag the ball under somebody else to get the holding the ball. People will just keep trying to take advantage of it, but having people deliberately going with the head's not going to be good for head injuries. They've got to do something about that one.
They got the biggest wake-up call of all in the last few weeks with the Casey Tatunji thing, and that's an accident from all accounts that he just kind of had his head down and went into someone. But there are players who deliberately put their head down that have to count themselves lucky when they're putting their head down on purpose. That can happen to them so damn easy, but it doesn't.
I was one of the ones as a kid myself where my parents wouldn't let me play AFL because they thought it too dangerous. You can see that if that sort of thing keeps happening and why they're doing it, you know why they're doing it, so that you get the kids into the game without the parents thinking, oh, they're going to get injured every time they go out there. Yeah, they've just got to be careful because you'll have people doing it deliberately. It makes it even worse.
I reckon take it back another step. The reason players are now ducking to get free kicks at stoppages is because of poor rules and the flooding of the stoppages that the Swans have brought into the game. That's why they do it, because it's too hard to get a clearance because there's 36 players standing around the ball. I blame him.
What about Kevin Sheedy? Because I can relate this back to Kevin Sheedy. Terry Wallace invented the flood in 2000 to beat Kevin Sheedy's Bombers. So it is Kevin Sheedy's fault that players are ducking their heads.
If anyone gets hurt playing footy, it's Sheedy's fault.
That's as good a reason as any to move on to GWS Collingwood.
Yeah, Collingwood struggled, didn't they? They were behind at half-time and kicked away in the last. Margin flattered them, really.
How good is Jeremy Cameron, though?
He's a freak.
They kicked 7 of their 10 goals or something like that.
He made their defenders look silly.
In the first 3 quarters, Jeremy Cameron had 7 kicks and 7 goals. He's not getting a lot of it in there, but he sure makes the most of it.
He is the next gun forward of the competition, and this is why I don't understand the chasing of Franklin, because he'll be a better footballer than Franklin within 2 years. He's a very similar player. When the ball hits the ground and gets out the back, he's faster, he's more athletic, and he works well on the lead. But the one thing he's got that Franklin doesn't, he's a much better contested mark, especially over his head.
He only took up footy at 15 too.
I like where you're going with this, Fyfe. You're basically saying that if it wasn't for the freakish skills of Cameron, they'd be an even bigger wash-up because of
Kevin Sheedy.
He is a gun. He kicks better than Franklin. He's good both left and right.
I don't know about that. You're trying to wind me up now, so just give it a rest. I know where you're going with this, and it's not going to work.
It took you long enough.
No, I've been sitting here just letting it go.
How was it that he's a better kick than Franklin that actually got you peaked onto that? Because Franklin isn't a good kick. You could say that about a lot of players except Travis Cloak.
It was just the 20 things you said along with it.
Anyway, Collingwood didn't show up, and they're still front runners. The midfield's still full of front runners.
The 40-point margin in the end wasn't a true reflection of how good GWS though. They were pretty good.
Melbourne will have their work cut out for them next week for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's as good a reason as any to move on to Melbourne, getting pummeled by a North.
Yeah, it's just one of those 20-goal wins. What can I say? I mean, Melbourne have sort of struggled this year, and we've seen the scorelines to their losses, but when you actually go there live and you see them in the flesh, you get a far greater appreciation for how bad they really are. How do you manage to only kick 4 goals for the entire game at Etihad is beyond me.
Jeremy Cameron had outscored them against Collingwood, who by quarter time, was it? Yeah?
Yeah. We talked briefly last week about Jack Watts and Fyfie. I think you mentioned that he dominated in the under-18 championships and it convinced Melbourne to invest their number 1 pick in him. I'd love to see what he did to warrant that number 1 pick, because from what I saw on Saturday, it was a dead set potato.
No heart, no intensity.
Whenever he goes for the ball or when he's supposed to help his teammates, he just looks like a deer in the headlights. Melbourne should just cut their losses. Let him put on a dress and get his sex change.
North Melbourne, does it just frustrate you when the team can play like that? Although it was playing one-way football against a pretty poor poor team.
I don't really subscribe to the whole flat track bully thing. I think we have a venue mentality. I think we play well at the Dome, but it's just whenever we go outside, we just look like a completely different team altogether.
North Melbourne have the best percentage of any side outside of the top four.
I think it's 122 or something, isn't it?
It is.
It is the 6th best in the competition, and they sit 10th.
Well, with Essendon possibly losing points and 9th maybe getting a spot in the finals, I guess we've got a slim chance of maybe seeing some September action.
Cats St Kilda, that was pretty comprehensive. Honestly, they smashed them. Much like North Melbourne smashed Melbourne, basically the same.
No moral victory this time.
Yeah, not even the free kick count, I don't think, or neutrals on the main board.
They won the free kick count and you lose by 100 points. I mean,
they were playing with them in the end.
There was a thread on the Bay through the week titled 27 that St Kilda are in line for their 27th wooden spoon next season. I tend to agree.
They would have to be close to favourites, wouldn't they?
It'd be them versus Melbourne.
Yeah, but they'll have Jesse Hogan, who may go Jeremy Cameron on the competition. He looks the goods in the VFL.
If they get a lift with a new coach, then yeah, St Kilda will have it all to themselves.
Actually, that's interesting about the new coach because Dean Laidley's made a move in the last week, come into contention with...
I'd laugh if he was the Melbourne coach. I never rated him. He was a very good strategic coach, but he was never the sort of coach that had a sight on the future. He just sort of lived in the now and tried to get the best out of what he had at the time.
So he's a poor development coach, which is exactly what they don't need.
I think Melbourne are in search for a coach that's got a magic wand jammed up his ass because unless he can perform a miracle, they're screwed.
If you don't value your coaching career, you might as well just throw on your resume for the Melbourne gig.
Although look at Port, and no offence, Griff, but you know, even the doggies, those Geelong fellas have performed some minor miracles there. They've really turned you around in short court, so maybe it's possible that if there is some sort of light in the tunnel.
The right appointment might turn all things around.
Ken Hinckley ran second in about 4 coaching jobs before he got the Port one. He obviously had something, but whatever it was, there was something 4 clubs didn't quite rate. And Chris Scott missed the Port Adelaide job to Primus, goes to Geelong, wins a flag. Sometimes those blokes who are thereabouts are actually worth the punt.
St Kilda happy with Scott Waters, do you reckon?
Oh, who knows? But that list is pretty shit too. If Nick Revolt hadn't been playing out of his skin, they'd be near Melbourne at the moment.
They're 1 win ahead of them. They're not going well at all.
I know we don't usually run with this sort of material on the vlogcast, but just from that game, I thought the group photo of the two sides after the game in tribute of Casey Tatangi was a nice touch.
Yeah, I thought it was good too. And even Hawthorn getting involved.
You don't see that often after a game.
And it's nice to see it done for the right occasion. It's kind of like how on Anzac Day they run through the same banner kind of thing. It's just those little things that it's just kind of like you put aside the rivalries, which in perspective are quite petty, but you get something out of it at the end that's quite moving.
It's good that you mention Anzac Day because what with Essendon crossing Vlad, I think we all know that Essendon fans haven't realised yet that they're probably going to lose Anzac Day pretty soon.
They'll be getting 8 trips interstate too. They can look forward to that.
All part of the new equalisation that the Hobnobs are in the States for at the moment.
They'll get Sunday twilight games too.
It'll be dressed up as being a part of those changes.
Which brings us to our Flogcast fix for the week. How do we fix equalisation?
The AFL's got to give more of its money out to its clubs. It's got to level out the fixture instead of trying to maximise attendances and media revenue with the big clubs on the big days and the blockbusters. You know, right now the AFL makes no apologies for saying the fixture is optimised for media coverage.
You kind of beat me to it there. We could make it a lot more equal in the AFL by just giving someone else Anzac Day instead of Essendon and giving them all the Sunday twilight games whilst they play interstate.
Yeah, 2 birds, 1 stone, Fyfie, absolutely. Give my Bulldogs and Dan's Kangaroos Good Friday game. That'd be a nice start. Collingwood and Essendon don't need that kind of exposure to grow.
You got to keep Collingwood on Anzac Day. They're the ones that bring the crowd. You got to play it like Queen's Birthday with Melbourne, except you piss Melbourne off from Queen's Birthday as well.
Yeah, if you're going to talk crowds, you don't want Melbourne on Queen's Birthday.
Good Friday is all about fasting and stuff, isn't it? So I think it's kind of appropriate to have North and the doggies on that day.
Just close all the food venues at that game as well and don't allow anyone to buy anything.
It's a good religious thing to go without decent footy for the day as well.
There's rugby league, I think, on Good Friday now. The AFL's behind the 8 ball on that one. Be a good way to sort of get it on the NRL's exclusive coverage of the Good Friday, plus give a boost to the Bulldogs and Norths.
Gold Coast Carlton couldn't be replicated, which was sad.
Carlton were too strong and didn't choke this time, basically. It's the expected result.
Cruiser backed up his performance from last week as well. He was good in the ruck.
Freo Adelaide, Ross Lyon football. They won with 33 inside 50s. It's getting beyond a joke now, isn't it?
Yeah, as expected.
Fyfie, you went a bit hard on Barlow last week, I thought. I mean, how did you rate his performance against the Crows?
I didn't watch it. I'd rather watch Geelong play silky football and smash smash the Saints than Freo in a close one.
Oh, that's fair enough.
Sydney, Richmond,
Yeah, Sydney,
So-
too easy, I think, cruising.
they're actually a really good side. And as was mentioned before, there are 3 teams in it. And I don't feel so bad about the loss. Like, there were a few mistakes made that could have been done better. They went too small down back, and that was exposed by White. But honestly, they were just really, really good.
You couldn't question the Tigers' effort. I mean, the Swans are just a hard side to beat at the SCG.
You know, 1 or 2 things Richmond could have done better, but that wouldn't have changed the result. It may have made it maybe 2 goals closer. They're more imposing than last year, which bodes well for them because so are Hawthorn and Geelong.
Yeah, I really have been impressed by Sydney. I've got to say, they were kicking butt. I've got to admit that Kieran Jack, and even though in a way I don't rate them, something just doesn't seem right about them. I don't know what it is.
I'll tell you one thing, and I've hated this since I noticed it in grand final days, but Dan Hanbury, is there a guy in the AFL who gets up after he gets a hit or a knock with more of a sook on his face? Every time he cops the knock, looks like he's been shot. And I noticed it when he took that pretty gutsy contested mark in the grand final last year, but he still took an eternity to get up. And I've noticed it a few times this year. Maybe it's just his facial expression, but he looks like he's sooking.
Is he worse than Lindsay Thomas?
No, it's not that he dives. It's just that he makes this really sooky face.
I think Thomas just over-exaggerates contact and he stays on the ground.
Hanbury kind of does that.
Hanbury is different. What Hanbury does is when he gets a bit of a knock, it's like, oh, I'm really suffering, but I'm going to play on because I'm such a legend. And they all do that at Sydney. It's like, oh, it was a grand final and we beat the best team, the Hawks. And, you know, we were injured. Like, he did it on one leg, Goodsy. He was so injured. And the rest of us were injured, but we still got up because it's Bloods culture. It's like, oh, fuck. It makes me want to.
That is kind of what it's like. He gets up as if he's wounded.
Is it like the Chris Judd grimace?
It's exactly like the Chris Judd grimace.
Turned up to 11, though, and they all do it, and he's the worst offender. That's one of the things that annoys me about Sydney, besides Toller.
The Paul Roos commentary, been avoiding it for a few weeks, but when you're watching your own team, it's a bit hard to. He's just so...
Yeah, it's hard to watch the game and have his commentary in the background.
Brian Taylor makes me want to throw something at the TV, and Roos is getting very close, and I'll just leave it at that.
I don't know what we have to put up with him.
On the Bay this week, Ugak's thread of the week.
Yeah, it's always just one post in 100. Well, you're fantastic, but they really are. They make you laugh every time and never disappoint.
Definitely post of the week, not so much thread of the week.
My favourite thread was the one started by Probitas with the Luke Darcy beard competition. I found that one quite funny. And just last week's poll, who has the strongest case in court? And well, there's been a new one come up recently, but 17% said strategy versus Bay 13, 20% said Ugak versus Fox Footy, and 63% said Jack Watts versus Melbourne for ruining his career. That seems about right. Next week's games. Look, I think the biggest one of these games is on Saturday afternoon, and it's not Hawthorn Richmond.
Oh, the KFC Cup's huge. Come on, boys.
KFC Cup's huge, but I want to see the cripple fight out at Skoda Stadium because I think the Giants win this and that would sum up Melbourne's season.
I think the Giants are a real show to win it, which makes me very unhappy.
The first time these two teams played, I actually went to this game because it was on earlier in the day. I was going to go to a North game afterwards. GWS should have won that game. They were the better team for most of the game, and Melbourne just sort of turned it on in the last quarter and ended up winning by 30 or 40 odd points.
I'm sad to say I have a sneaky feeling that Sheedy's going to break his duck for the season and ruin my day. I've got a feeling they're going to get up.
Sheedy's not going to ruin your day, Richmond are.
Oh,
Be cool.
the hubris.
Yeah, I don't even believe that for a second.
800% confidence down at Richmond. Still,
It's down to about 8% after Paul Roos' mob finished with us.
I don't think the Hawks are necessarily got that one in the bag at all, Fyfie. I think Richmond, they match up really well against us, have a bit of the wood over us at the moment, so I think we might be due a loss. I think after a hard game against the Bombers, I think the Tigers might have a win.
Modesty isn't your strong suit, Wrangler.
Look, we spread pretty well, which would hopefully potentially expose Hawthorn's midfield, but there is one massive problem, and it's your goals. It's just a rain of goals. We've got Rance, we've got Chaplin, but you have 3 forwards who are very, very good, and we don't have that third key defender with Grimes out because we don't really have one the right size for Gunston, and that's, I think, where you beat us. You'll kick too many goals.
Yeah, I don't rate Richmond's sort of bottom part of their 22. Their top part's amazing. I think they had the most AA reps last year. They've got some really good and a lot of top-level players, but, you know, like the Jake King, Shane Edwards, Robin Nahas, Luke McGuan.
Nahas hasn't played in about 12 weeks. I stamped his papers quite a while ago. Edwards is actually, he's having a bad 4 weeks, but he was for a while there one of the most improved players in the comp. He's got very good hands. His kicking's a little bit off, but he's very good in traffic and he dishes it out well, but he's best used probably up forward. He's our best crummer off the pack and they don't use him there enough.
Who?
Shane Edwards.
Who?
Shut up.
Yeah, tipping the Hawks.
I'll go Hawks.
We're going to have a challenge, Fyfie.
One of us gets to construct a thread for the other must post it. Within reason, it can't be longer than a Bosk essay, which means it's pretty long anyway, but
The loser has to make a thread. You're on.
Done deal. I like it.
Friday night, North Melbourne, Geelong.
Olsen Cup. Who gets top bunk?
Loser gets a hug.
I'm going to tip North to keep their finals hopes alive. Geelong will be starting to rest people pretty soon, I reckon, and won't have the same intensity.
We gave Cats a good shake earlier in the year. We lost by a point. Look, the fact that this game's at the Dome, I'd say we've got a small chance, but can't see us beating the Cats.
I think North will put up a massive fight, but will swallow out. They lose a little bit of that physicality at the drop of the ball at Goldstein's feet. I mean, I know you've got a few other like heavy set plotters there, Dan. You know that.
That's the point, though. Swallow out is great because they can bring someone that can run.
Yeah, maybe. Look, I actually think that North are really going the right way. They're a good team. I think it'll be very close being at the Dome, despite Swallow being out. But I think the Cats, they'll just finish a little bit too strong.
North could be in Richmond's position with a decent coach, I reckon.
Oh, Tash.
It's the president who appoints the coach.
And re-signs the coach before he's even finished.
West Coast, Gold Coast. This game's pretty irrelevant. West Coast, if they hadn't pulled the pin before last week, they would have by now. And Gold Coast can't make it either. It's just seeing if they can get a win in Perth.
Have they been the most disappointing team this year?
Pretty close.
Well, North Melbourne would go close.
West Coast was tip for the flag by some people, so...
Yeah, people had West Coast in the top 4.
I think West Coast definitely the most disappointing. How did it go wrong? What happened? I don't get it. Juries didn't have that many, did they? They had a few, but you know.
Maybe them getting picked for the flag is just them being overrated. Carlton Freo, this one's got implications on the 8. This is Fremantle going for top 4. This is Carlton going for 8th spot. Fire up the barbecue, I reckon, because I reckon Freo win this.
Ooh, I think the Blues at the Dome could, really push Freo. They could win that.
Could go either way, I think. Be a close one.
I reckon Ross Lyon chokes them badly. I can just see it happening.
They've conceded 220 less points than Hawthorn on top of the ladder, and 50 less than Sydney to be the tightest side defensively. Yeah, it's just horrible to watch them.
That goes with Ross Lyon being a tight-ass playing Monopoly, as was said on here a couple of weeks ago.
I couldn't really care less about this game. Sorry.
I guess that's partly the Freo thing, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, because if you couldn't care less about that game, you're not going to care less about the next one, Brisbane St Kilda.
Meaningless.
Yeah, Brisbane will have that easy.
Bulldogs Sydney.
Yeah, just bend over and hope it doesn't hurt too much. I think we've got Daniel Cross playing VFL for us. We're not really playing our best 22. We're in the rebuild, playing the kids and all that sort of thing. So this sort of opposition, I think, will take care of us pretty easily.
If you bring what you did to West Coast, it'll be a close game.
I hope so, but yeah, like if they beat Richmond by 7 goals and Richmond beat us by 10 goals, just add those two numbers up and it starts to hurt.
You shouldn't do things that way because that makes Gold Coast a better side than Geelong based on the fact they beat Collingwood.
Yeah, I think by round 11 you could draw a little loop-de-loop where every side had beaten the one next to it.
Except GWS.
Sydney got full of Fyfie. This is just a comfortable 10-goal win.
I reckon they win this by about 6, so I'll do enough, but they won't smash them like they possibly could.
The shit fight on Sunday, it's a big one.
This one's huge because the only thing Adelaide have left now after last week is to end Port's season. That's all they got to play for in Port. Well, they'll want the win.
Port are ahead on showdowns, I think, even though they haven't sort of been up the top of the ladder as much as Adelaide. They actually lead the way with the showdown count, so they really get up for it.
Yeah, well, they didn't lose, which is good for the lotto tickets.
Yeah, you owe me a lotto ticket.
I'm going Port. Anyone else?
I'm going Adelaide. The underdog always gets up in these.
I'll go Port.
Yeah, I'll go Port.
Collingwood versus Essendon.
Fig Jam versus the Herd Reich.
How many people are going to be barracking for Collingwood and feeling a little bit dirty about it?
I will be.
Me.
It's like that Caro and Essendon thing for North supporters, isn't it? You don't want either of them to win. You want it to be a draw or something. Yeah, Essendon are in much better form, so they'll probably have that one, I think.
I reckon Collingwood beat them. This was the vlogcast for round 19. Fyfie joined by the Cat Wrangler.
Keep wrangling.
Gogriff.
Thanks, Fyfie.
And Dan.
See you later.
Once again, if you've made it this far, well done and thanks for listening.